Welcome into the TWMP Daily. I'm Jay Kroesen, and today we got a fantastic guest. We have Representative George Hruza, which you are just back from a very interesting trip, weren't you?
Absolutely. It was 250 legislators from all 50 states, 4 of us from Missouri.
Who went with you?
So we had Ian Mackey, a state representative, Bishop Davidson,
Okay.
and
Newly shaved Bishop Davidson,
newly
too.
shaved Bishop Davidson. That's correct. Yeah, you're right. And yeah, he looks like a young kid now.
Yeah.
It's like I said, are you sure you're old enough to be in the legislature? And Ben Keithley.
Okay, so you had a good crew with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they certainly took it all in. For them, it was the first time.
And so you went where?
So we went to the sites of the October 7th massacre. We went to Kibbutz Be'eri, where we saw the incredible destruction and things like, and then we had also witnesses. We had the survivors tell us some of their stories. So it really sticks to you because when you walk into these homes, which are totally blackened from being set on fire.
Yeah.
And one of the houses, they told us, yeah, well, they were in their safe room. They all have safe rooms, and so the family went in the safe room because the alarm went off that there are missiles coming in, and they're in the safe room. And then the terrorists try to burn them out, and sometimes they succeeded, so they die from smoke inhalation or being burned alive. The one that we visited, we had. They said, yeah, they were able to get through the window, and they keep shooting at the windows, and I guess they were able to. They threw 3 grenades into the safe room, and so what happened was that one of them was a dud, so it didn't explode, and what they did is the other 2, they threw the couches. There was a couch there. They threw it on the grenade, so it took most of the blast, but of course everybody was still injured, and. One of them actually got his arm shot off, so he bled to death. One of the people in there. So it was a very dramatic thing. But then we went to the Nova Film Festival site, which where 352 were murdered,
Yep.
and I found that the most impactful because they have all 352. That were murdered. They have pictures and little bios of all of these people. These are all young people. I'd say 18 to 23, somewhere in that range. And you just walk through this forest of these pictures. It's just, and you see all the futures. Some of these, some are starting to be engineers.
Yep.
One was a ballerina, who, there's a picture of her doing some fancy move, and all of that's gone. All of that future, their future is gone. And the thing challenging in Israel is that everybody there knows someone who was affected or who was murdered, or the 252 hostages that were taken. So Israelis are all very purposeful, unified, yet they going around their everyday life. And when we were there, we saw how that works. We were at the airport when we had the air raid sirens went off. So we were just getting off the bus. So they said, well, leave your luggage and just head to the shelter in the airport. And then we get into the terminal, and there's nobody. It's totally empty except for everybody's luggage in those turkey trot type lines left in place, and not one person. So we go to the shelter. Then 5 minutes later, the all clear sound. It was some rocket from the Houthis in Yemen. All clear, and they and then it just becomes, within minutes, it just becomes just as full as before. Everybody just goes up, but gets back in line where they were waiting. So they're very resilient. And the other thing that you notice when you go there is it's a true multicultural society.
Yeah.
As much or more than the U.S. because you've got the Jewish, you have Orthodox Jews walking right next to someone with a hijab, Palestinian or
Orthodox Christians also have very large.
Yeah, unorthodox Christians,
there.
Coptic Christians, Druze, Muslims. And they just all work together it's like there's no difference, and they vote.
Mhm.
All of them vote. They have members in the Knesset from the different Arab parties and
Mhm.
Palestinian parties. So it's a very different environment than what you hear in the news here.
I technology has truly been an amazing thing to see develop over the last few years. But one of the things, I mean, I remember when I was, whenever the first few minutes of the invasion was going on, I was laying on my couch and I was just scrolling through social media, and the first bit of footage was going through. It was it was crazy because we've never been in a world where we've had, the early 2000s, you had Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff like that, where you got clips of it mainly through the news. But from recently in the last few years, like whether it be Ukraine or in the Middle East, on social media, you'll just get raw footage of these events, and it really hits you differently when you see it not from a documentary or something. Like, this is somebody who had their phone out and was, whether it be at the concert or whether it be a family just enjoying their morning that day. It really hits you differently, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, because I saw some of those as well, and to me, the one thing that had a pretty emotional impact on me was at the Nova Festival. There were videos of the Israelis running, trying to get away, and basically just being shot, kind of as sort of like a shooting gallery.
And they were roughly, they weren't much older or much younger than me and Kelton.
Exactly, and that's, I mean, to me that was so. But the reason for me was really more of an emotional impact is because my mother survived the Holocaust, and she survived a death march from Hungary to Austria, and at one point in that march, something very similar happened. They had the militia lined up along the route at this pass, and what the prisoners were told is to run.
Mm-hmm.
And so she starts running, and then as she's running up the hill, there's this muddy road. All of a sudden, it started turning red from all the blood, and she keeps running, and then people start falling left and right of her. Ultimately, 2,000 started, 500 finished this death march to a concentration camp. And so when I saw this stuff, it just made me feel they were basically being hunted. It was anyway. So for me, it kind of hit home, and it shows.
And you shared a little bit about your mother's story this past session. You on Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Yes.
And it was a very touching story. I mean,
Thank
was. It's different. Again, I mean, it's so much different when you hear about it or read about it in a book or documentary or something, and it's so much more different when you actually talk to somebody who has had a family member experience it.
Yeah. So to me, that and so that hopefully that comes across, and it even shows this kind of is a little bit as a side, but in my campaign, my opponent tried to say that some of the neo-Nazis that were demonstrating were my brethren. And so I realized then that there's a lot of lack of knowledge, because for someone to think that son of a Holocaust survivor could be a neo-Nazi, it's just so absurd. It was just totally absurd. And so to me, the thing from going to Israel was that it's clear that the individuals that are demonstrating and they are calling about from the river to the sea, they were physically there, and they say, well, do we really want to murder 10 million people of all races, religions, in this vibrant, multicultural society? It's just this totally, to me, that the best antidote to that kind of anti-Semitism is actually hopefully to go there
Yeah.
and to actually see firsthand that this is a civilized society which loves peace. I mean, they love peace and they love life, and they're fighting organizations or groups that actually worship death. That becomes the problem.
Yeah.
That you don't find a common ground.
And I mean, I have not really had the privilege to step out anywhere out of this country to any country right now. But from when I was in college, a lot of my professors were talking about their experiences going to Israel, and they're like, it is a unique country. I mean, you can go from. I mean, they talked about the difference just between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. I mean, Jerusalem's just such an ancient city. There's so much history to it. But then when they talked about Tel Aviv, it's like it is exactly like it is a modern, technologically advanced city, and to have something that unique, where you have a country that can have history that dates back thousands of years, and then just up the road you have another city that is like cutting edge technology, almost like Singapore.
Yeah.
And so I have not had the privilege yet to go to anywhere in the world outside of this country. I think the closest I've gotten is Canada. When we visited Niagara Falls, I got the text. It was like, you are entering Canadian media space or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
That's about the closest I've gotten. But the stories I've heard from my professors of their visits to Israel, it sounds like a unique country. There is no other countries kind of like that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's because it is a true melting of civilizations. I mean, our modern civilization, at least the Western civilization, really started there. It started in Israel, Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem. I mean, all the major religion, we call it basically single God religions.
Monotheistic.
Monotheist. Thank you. Yeah, monotheistic religions. They started. You got the Jewish was there. They've been there for 3,500 years. Then you got Christians, and then 600s Muslim.
Yeah,
It all started there. And what you see in Jerusalem is all of those religions work together. It's really a free sort of, as far as religion goes, there is no oppression of one versus another. You go to the some of the churches, and it's divided. They all decide, they take care of different parts of the church, different Christian.
And if I remember my political science classes right, each community basically has representation in the government.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, so it's anybody that living in Israel proper, and there's Jews, Palestinians, Muslim, Druze, Christian of various categories. They all get to vote, and they do have representation. So there are parties representing Arabs, representing Palestinians, and Christians as well. So it's about, the country is mostly Jewish. It's 80% Jewish, and about 20% are all the other groups. And those actually keep increasing, that percentage. Also, it's all different races.
Yeah.
Because there are many Sephardic Jews, many of them have a black skin color, and of course Ashkenazi Jews from Europe are pale white, and every shade in between. So that's what makes that so unique. And then yes, they do have a bit of almost like Silicon Valley in Singapore, or Silicon Valley, because
it's very technological. Every time I see a list of most technologically advanced or some of the biggest or some of the best countries for tech businesses and stuff, Israel is always in the top 10 list.
So I'll bring another aspect of Israel, is that they used to, when they started, the state started in 1948, for the first 20-some years, they were mostly a socialist type of state, and including the kibbutz were kind of little mini communist places. And Israel needed a lot of help at that time, and then in the 1980s, they saw that it would make basically they shifted to more of a free market economy, and that is when Israel really took off. And I think it's a great example of, I come from a communist country, Czechoslovakia, and so to me it shows what can be done if you actually free up the entrepreneurial spirit, which we have in the US.
It's always interesting because the points where you see the most economic advancement or just advancement for everybody in the country, especially in those communist countries. I mean, it was during the Kelton, my Chinese history is evading me right now. But it was during I think it was the Deng period of the Chinese Communist Party in China.
Yeah. Yes.
When they opened up the economy, and there was a real chance that they could have liberalized like a more typical Western country. Russia was a little bit different. I mean, it was kind of an odd basket case situation where when they did liberalize, it was in this kind of weird way.
Because it was a very corrupt way they did it. They developed the oligarchs. Czech Republic, where I grew up, they did it. Actually, what they did is they privatized their industry, and the way they privatized it is they actually gave shares to all the citizens.
Yeah.
So every citizen got some shares in those companies, and they kind of have what we call, I call it was Wild West capitalism. There was like anything goes. They like right away went from this communist thing to saying, well, you can do anything, like so. Yeah, anybody can have guns, and you can have and gambling, the casinos everywhere, and prostitution, everything legal. Basically, the government was just getting totally out of the way. Václav Klaus was the prime minister at the beginning.
I think,
and it made a huge
Voss
difference.
was telling me back when he was in private sector before he became state rep. I think remember if I was telling him right, he was telling me right. It was during the 90s or so when when the Eastern European countries were really trying to liberalize. And he was telling me, he was like, I mean, he's like, if you thought, working a regular corporate job was already pretty hectic, I mean, try working one when all these countries instantly got access to, the free market.
Oh, yeah.
And he was telling me these stories of, working with countries, whether it be Hungary, Romania, or Ukraine, Poland, and just seeing how whole populations became they got more access to basic goods that we've had for years here.
Yeah.
But just the true opportunity there really was to open up an economy and actually have some desire to better your life and your family's life in those countries. He said it was remarkable.
It was amazing because I visited in '89, just before the Velvet Revolution, and then I visited again about 4 years later. It was like night and day. Before, it was kind of this great place with empty store shelves, everybody kind of just trudging along, not looking up, it's kind of all gray, and now it's like totally blossomed. Now the amount of damage that this kind of stuff does is Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, before the Second World War had some of the highest GDP per person, basically income in Europe, because they were very industrialized, very effective, very, very strong economically. Then you have 40 years of communist rule, and it became one of the poorest countries.
Yeah.
And now, even though we are now 35 years later, they still haven't fully caught up. I mean, they still have a ways to go. So.
In Czechoslovakia, they were the ones under the Ceausescu regime, correct?
No. Ceausescu was Romania.
Okay.
So Czechoslovakia, they call it the Velvet Revolution because there was not a shot fired, and they just the communists just backed off, and then they split Czech and Slovak, and it was in 1993, and it was a peaceful. There was not a shot fired, unlike Yugoslavia. And all that. So, but back to Israel, I guess I should say, because we kind of I went a little bit side on that. Is that they've are a really good case study to show how an economy, how the huge difference a free market economy. So to me, when I hear about New York and Mandami and it's just.
I always thought my mayors were bad, and then I heard about this guy. I was like, I'm kind of glad my mayor isn't too bad.
and I just don't understand that people can't learn from history.
Yeah.
It does not work anywhere. It doesn't even work in those wonderful places like Scandinavia, because guess what? In Scandinavia, it became unsustainable,
Yeah.
and they've changed, and they've actually becoming very much free market oriented economies, and they're doing very well.
I think
So
it was the Swedish prime minister one time. They were talking to him about it, and he was center right, so he wasn't like super gung ho one way or the
yeah,
other on things, but he was talking about it. And obviously, countries like Sweden, they have very large social security, social safety nets
yeah,
and all that stuff. But he said, I mean, we're at a point where we can't pay for it, but the reason we can pay for so much of it is because of the free market economy they do have.
exactly. And they do things like they have they tax capital very lightly. That's what they introduced there. So even though income still taxed very heavily,
Yeah.
which is of course one thing that
And I think they have a regressive tax form too, if
well
I remembered right.
well they
I
do
could
have
be
a very
wrong.
large VAT, so it's
Yeah.
like almost 20%, about maybe like 22% value added tax, which is somewhat of a regressive
Yeah.
tax. But no, their income tax stuff was very progressive. It was like I went up to like 70%. Now I think it's below 50, the top rate.
Yeah.
So you're right. So now the reason though this trip to Israel was really important, and especially bringing some legislators with us, is because we want to address at our state level
Yeah.
the anti-Semitism.
And you had a
That's
bill
really
on that
come up.
this past
And
session,
so
didn't
I
you?
had a bill on it, which I got through the House twice, and then it basically died on the vine in the Senate,
Which everything pretty much
which
did this
tends
year.
to happen. It tends to happen. So I don't feel too bad. I mean, I think I was able to pass it. It was like 108, 109 in the House. So
Yeah.
so we're bringing that bill back, and that's a bill that really is designed to make sure Jewish students in our public schools, K through 20, are able to go to school, focus on their studies, rather than worry about being harassed, bullied, intimidated by anti-Semitic behavior. And I like to stress anti-Semitic behavior as opposed to speech. Because we're not trying to restrict speech in any way, but it is when it's directed at an individual.
Yeah.
Sort of the kind of thing that comes to mind is when someone tells a Jewish student, this Jewish student, you are, committing genocide in Gaza. I think you should go back to Poland.
Yeah.
Now, of course, going back to Poland is where 2 million Jews were murdered during the Holocaust. So that kind of behavior would be intimidating and would be not allowed. And if it did happen and the school didn't properly address it, it would be a Title VI violation, like it would be if there was some racial type situation that happened.
And I haven't seen too many of those cases in Missouri. I mean, most of the cases, if they were, they've probably been outshined by what's going on in New York and what's going on in California and those other bigger universities.
Well, we did have some at St. Louis University did have some issues, but we also had testimony from a number of students. Not all of them can make it. You get like 4 days to come, but we had several students from Parkway and Kirkwood and basically in my area where they have been exposed to that kind of stuff. So this is again the one-on-one stuff. Now, interestingly, WashU had some of those attempts at those demonstrations.
Yeah.
They did as well. They tried to set up.
I remember that one.
But the chancellor there really handled it very well, and he actually got kudos at the hearing we had, because he basically within hours they just had the individuals arrested. The majority were not even students, so the students were disciplined, and then the other ones were arrested for trespassing. And they've not really had problems going forward. We've had anti-Semitic incidents. We recently had in Clayton had the targeted burning of cars. Now, my bill wouldn't address that specifically.
That's crime that could easily be taken care of under normal law.
Right. However, the reason we want to be dealing with the anti-Semitism going in schools is because those kinds of incidents where it's just intimidation and so forth, and some of it dehumanizing, it then gives permission to some of the crazies to feel,
Yep.
well, these are really bad people, so it's okay to cause them harm, even though, of course, Jewish students have absolutely nothing to do with what's happening
Yeah.
in Israel, and they have no influence on it. So it's a little bit like when we had the COVID started and people wouldn't go to Chinese restaurants.
Yep.
It's that's to me is it's not racism necessarily, but it is this whatever by bigotry, discrimination. So we've got to try to tamp down the anti-Semitic stuff before it reaches violence. That's the key thing, because we have the crazies. I mean, during my campaign, I mean, they talk about it all now. You know, with Charlie Kirk being
Yeah.
murdered. That rhetoric, you know, keep calling Republicans Nazis and all that stuff. That's the kind of rhetoric which then gives permission to those crazies to feel that they've got to take action.
Exactly.
And I mean, even during my campaign when I ran for Senate, we had some crazy person try to run my campaign manager off the road on I-270. And it wasn't that the other campaign did it, but it was the rhetoric, you know, calling me extreme, this and that, and I'm just, you know, this crazy person.
And it's I mean, that sort of rhetoric is also it's we've seen it used so much over the past few years. I mean, I remember back when people called George W. Bush a Nazi. And like George W. Bush is like one of the nicest people you can possibly meet.
Exactly.
And so it's gotten to the point now where it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, where you use it so much that it doesn't mean anything anymore. And so if it ever comes to a point where you're actually like it's an actual thing you're saying, and you know somebody actually is this sort of level of extreme, then nobody's going to listen to you because you've said it all this time, all this long.
That's right.
And so I think we've seen that happen so much over the last 20, 30 years. It's gotten to a point where I think the public have kind of gotten sick of hearing about this, but then it's also that double-edged sword where there could be a point where somebody comes along, somebody runs for office or whatever, who actually is that kind of extreme.
Exactly.
And whenever you say it's going to fall on deaf ears because everybody's just going to think you're playing politics.
Exactly. Again. I agree. And it is, of course, always difficult because you've got freedom of speech, freedom of expression. And so, I mean, I'm fine with all that, people doing that. You just kind of wish that you'd have some, I guess, more adults in the room.
Yeah, with freedom of speech, you think it would also come with people wanting to moderate themselves.
Exactly.
Not purposely go out and say awful things to people. So it's a weird balancing act you got to follow as a country.
Yeah. Well, it probably is a little bit of social media has a lot to do with it because people feel somehow that they have some anonymity because I've gotten some really ridiculous type of stuff, both by email and on Facebook. When I post something, and it's like what like what's the point? The people sometimes spout some of the ridiculous stuff. So you're right. That is the challenge. So I just hope that and Israel is trying. This trip was organized by the Consul General, so because they're trying to reach out because they've clearly not been winning the public relations war across the world. I mean, they try, but the challenge is that they are kind of constrained because all they can is they tend to, I believe, tell the facts as they have them, or if they have them. The other side isn't constrained by that. Yeah. So they can make whatever they want and make pictures that are totally misleading and whatever, and they just do that. The Israel government is not going to do that, and so people are much more excited by the sensational stuff. Yeah.
Well, we won't take much more of your time, but if you are around and you see Representative Hruza, do ask him about the trip. We haven't been able to cover nearly as much as I would have liked today, but it is a very interesting trip. I mean, I think a very important one too. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about it.
Thank you.
We'll be back sometime this week. Scott will be on with somebody. Kelton's trying to figure out who right now. But we'll be back more this week.